Hi everyone. Welcome everyone to week 5. I think. Hello.
Hey.
Hello everyone. I'm over here. Hi everyone. Welcome to week 5. I've got a bit of noise here, is that right? All right. Okay. I'm going to move here so I can't hear. Oh no, I have to stand here so people can hear. Great. Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, before we begin, I'd like a bit of silence in the room, please. I know we're super excited after our prototype workshop this morning, but we just need a bit of silence. Okay, we'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the land on which we meet today and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, traditions, cultures and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. We're super lucky today to have Tash and Cisco from S1T2, Story First Technology Second, come in and talk to you. It was a great lecture last year, and so we've invited them back. And basically, they're going to share their insights into their work and their practice, and also Cisco's going to run through his journey from uni to where he is today. I think, is that right? There's going to be a Q&A session at the end, so make sure you have your questions ready. And I'm going to hand over to Tash and Cisco. You want to give them a round of applause, I reckon, for coming in.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm doing a super quick intro because I promised Cisco I would not steal his thunder. But just to recap and introduce ourselves. We represent S1T2, which stands for Story First, Technology Second. And I want you to think of that as we believe stories are the best way of communicating and technology can enrich the way we tell the stories. Cisco is going to dive a little bit more into all of that, but to introduce him, he is a remarkable young man, has been with us for a couple of years now. And I'm really excited that he's sharing his journey because I hope what you will get out of it in your own personal journeys is that Cisco is the kind of person we look for in our team. And as he shares more about his story, you can see that, I hope you see that his ambition and his drive shines through in everything he does. So at the end, I think Cisco's got a slide talking about, we are always looking for really exciting and new talent. So yeah, please, hope you enjoy it and have fun.
Hello? Okay, cool. I don't have to stand by that mic. I wasn't expecting that introduction, but basically today I've split my presentation into 2 parts. Like, one is telling you about S1T2, what we do as a company, the type of projects that I've worked on. I've given like 2 case studies. But I also thought it would be useful to you guys to give a bit of insight into how I got to S1T2 and also some like practical advice about how to set up your portfolio, what companies are looking for and that type of thing. So, yeah, this is me. My name is actually Francisco Rebello, but everyone calls me Cisco, and I'm the design lead at S1T2. So yeah, this is me like now, kind of 10 years later after uni, working in a new country that I didn't start at. And I'm originally from London, baby. But yeah, like it's taken time to get to something like S1T2. I worked in different big agencies, small studios. I worked as a graphic designer in like this Pimp My Ride style motor museum where we're making all graphics. And I also thought it's worth pointing out that I studied industrial design at uni. But I think like, I remember when I was studying, you're so caught up in I'm doing the wrong type of design. I want to be doing this and that, but like, don't worry about what you've like the degree that you've got. It doesn't stop you from getting to what you want to do and what the future will hold and what your next job and the jobs after that. Yeah, and also I wanted to kind of hone in on the idea. Now I'm a digital designer. And as I said, like I studied industrial design. Moving out into the world of graphic design felt like a sidestep, and you guys think study visual communications, but within that, especially when you go out into the industry, you realize there's people that are specific about branding, specific about digital designs and the different niches. And I found this on an old blog of mine. And one of the key turning points for me, I was working in that car museum place, and I found I was rejected from a job interview, but they liked my passion. And when they put this advert for an internship, I applied and I had the internship. And that little bit of industry, like working in an agency and working on clients and working in digital, I didn't realize it was the beginning of a new thing for me, working in this digital agency, like changed the game for me. Like the same recruiters I was chasing were now chasing me. So like I went from internship, they helped me make my portfolio, and then I got my first job as a digital designer. And to give you a bit of insight, if you don't know what digital design is, this is probably the most extreme version of it, but it's like there's graphic design where you're making stuff look nice, you're connecting with people's emotions, you're using colors and typography. But digital design does all that, but within the field of phones, screens, websites. So you will need to learn the different software needed for it. And there's different and also the different archetypes, knowing what a navigation is, knowing what a menu is, an icon. And yeah, there's different levels to that. And this is kind of the most extreme version, which is like using Figma or Sketch to make symbol libraries and put them together and be ready pixel perfect. But another way of being a digital designer, this is like a project from my website, one I showed to get my S1T2 job, is like making websites, but you're still being a graphic designer, you're still choosing photography, you're still editing photography, telling your creative director why this font style is better than the others, but you're doing it with the knowledge of, like the canvas size for a website or making it responsive for mobile. So I guess I wanted to say, like, by the time I got my job in S1T2, went from industrial designer, graphic designer, and digital designer. And if I knew that, like all those niches at the beginning, it would have been maybe different. But like, it is good to know the different smaller sections within graphic design. And I wanted to tell you, like, I left London 3 years ago. It was different because I already had been working, but this is my experience of coming to Australia looking for a job with no job. So what I did when I left, I basically reached within my network in the company I was working at. I said, I'm going to have a leaving party. If anyone knows, I was actually supposed to be in Melbourne, and I asked people for contacts, and people were like, yeah, my friend works in a company there, or my friend is a student, like meet them for a drink. And, when you're going to be looking for a job, like maybe the first place to look is within the people that you already know within their networks and their friends. Another thing I'm going to go into detail about later is making a portfolio. And I wanted my portfolio to, one, like represent me as a creative, but two, help me get a job. And one sneaky thing that I did that maybe people don't say about is like, there's these websites, Site Inspire and awards.com, and different blogs that you might know, they might have directories of where the companies are from. So I remember I like looked for all the Australian companies and opened the new tabs, and then looked for the ones that were relevant to me, and then emailed and called a bunch of them, like lots of them. And I'd also say a thing that I did that is good to do was when I was in Melbourne, I asked, instead of asking for a job, I asked everyone, can I have a coffee with you and show you my portfolio? Because, and also like use the excuse of I'm new, I'm from London, I'm in Melbourne, you guys seem really cool. I think when you're a student or you're a new graduate, you have that opportunity of like, hey, I'm fresh faced, I've just finished studying this, I'm really interested in what you do. And if you ask for a coffee or to show your portfolio, it may be asking for less of them, but you kind of open that conversation for further things. And how I got my S1T2 job was actually from a Facebook group. Someone told me there was this Facebook group for freelancers, Find a Fee Global. But my point here as well is that there's jobs in social media advertised, like first place an agency might post is on Instagram, or there's different communities, Facebook groups where people are sharing job posts and internship opportunities. So look with it beyond like just the kind of obvious places. And I also had this like key point. I was in Melbourne, and through this Facebook group, I found S1T2, and I had this like choice to make. I was in Melbourne and I got this job offer from another great company, RGA, which was basically kind of doing what I already had done. Like the project that they needed was like vacation cover on a website. And the S1T2 opportunity was something I'd not done before. Like, as I showed you, the kind of digital design that I was used to. And the S1T2 was a much more creative challenge. They needed me to like go with them on a trip and like lead the project and be kind of in charge of the creative, which was quite stressful and quite like pressure, had a lot of pressure on it, like compared to just going in and doing a job, putting stuff together, as opposed to like, oh, if this, you feel like, oh, this is going to go well based on like you doing well. So I think in your careers, you'll be going through this like decision making of, you might be in a job that no longer is fulfilling for you, and you might want to do something more creative, or you might want to like push into a new technology. And all of these things will come with risk. Like you want to move out of your comfort zone, but at the same time, that will come with a level of like, oh, I'm scared, and you know, this isn't as easy as what I used to do. So S1T2, the website didn't look like this before when I first joined, but was yeah, like let me go back. Basically, yeah, it wasn't what I knew. And I knew people that kind of worked in these type of companies. I'd worked in like big agencies where they have big clients and there's multiple designers. You have senior designer, midweight designer. It's a whole like structure. People were doing the same project even for like months and yeah, like working on retained accounts. And I've had a few interviews with companies like S1T2 where there's not so many designers. Like these guys are like it's called creative technology. They're using technology to make new things. And I was curious to be like what it would be like in this type of company. And I really loved like when I got to there, like in the building, like what I saw, because it didn't feel like the companies I'd been before, like a big building where they're telling you about all the creative stuff. Whereas here, I saw it as I walked past different people's screens. Everyone had a different, someone's designing something in 3D, someone's playing on AR. And I was like, oh, it looks like they're not doing work, but I think they're doing work. I think they're doing work. And the thing that I also found like really lovely was we have this thing called like Brief Bash, where we, the company, everyone talks about what they're doing, what work they're working on, and what new projects are coming through. And prior to COVID, I think it was a bit more like fussy about projects that we took and what we did. And it was interesting seeing the projects that they kind of rejected, like, and I guess given that context of companies I worked in before, it looked like some sort of utopia of like only cool creative technology projects, and also like projects for a good cause, like for a real purpose. This project they did in Fiji, teaching like good eating habits to school children. And like, I feel like in becoming a designer and going into work, I don't think you'll always get to work on the things that you are really passionate about when you are at uni. In fact, there's a lot of just like honing your craft, learning and becoming good before you get to the things that you really marry what you're passionate about and what you're good at. And there also the idea of story first, technology second was not just a name. The company was actually started in a uni from a like film society, and the name is the company ethos. When they say story first, technology second, we don't take projects starting from like the web design point of view. We don't just like, that was the mistake. That was the kind of learning that I had to evolve into, from thinking of these as straight up, like thinking in a graphic design sense of typography, the buttons and things like that. So like, what's the story that the client wants to tell? What, like, how does it want to make them feel? And the company S1T2, they do projects in websites, in exhibition experiences, filmmaking. So it's like the step before thinking about the website design. It's like, what's the most important emotion here? And then how can we bring that out in, for example, typography, layout, color, interaction? And the technology second part is interesting because in this company, they really do, they kind of, the technology, creative technology people here are more willing to explore and experiment and have a more open mind to what can be done. So that's really helpful as a creative, as a designer, an art director, of not thinking, oh, I'm limited to like what can move and what can't, like what can be 3D. Those, like, it's really about what's the core story, what would be the coolest or the most emotive way of telling that, and then working together to make it actually reality. So one project I'm going to tell you about is actually the first project I did at S1T2, which is this website for the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority in Abu Dhabi. And as I said, like the S1T2 way was something that I had to get used to. In my previous companies, when they want a pitch, they would mock up the design. This is how the website's going to look like. But with S1T2, the approach is different. The creative director, Chris, is really good with his words, and the company really together like fuss over details, words, gifts that we're choosing. And so what I had to begin my website design with was more like a mood board. This is a screenshot. They're actually like gifts and stuff, but you know, like geometric excellence inspired by the past, mathematical elegance. We're looking at pictures of architecture and movement. We're not looking at pictures of buttons or hero images or typography, but this is to give the feeling to the client that we're open. We haven't decided what the design's going to be, and also gives the feeling to the designer about you're going to have to match the color palette, the typography to what feels right. And I say match not in a literal sense of like using the exact same colors, but give that same feeling. And so we were lucky enough to go to Abu Dhabi on this trip, but what happened is we, one, spoke with the client in these meetings. Probably you do like similar workshops at uni and really getting the words out. You're trying to learn as much from the client to get what they're looking for. And also while we were there, it was actually really helpful to go out into the environment. Like we're in Australia. And I remember one of the first designs I made seemed really good. Like seemed everyone in the office said it was good. But when the company was like, oh, it feels a bit like New York. It feels like a New York financial company. It doesn't feel like Abu Dhabi. So, you know, it helped to see the architecture, to see the color palette of the desert sand on the buildings, how they keep things minimal when they want to. And the beginnings of every website start with some wireframes and starting with, I guess, information architecture, which is basically, we went to the workshops, we spoke to the clients, and you're trying to like turn all this information into a website. Like, okay, what do people first want to see on the homepage? They want to get an overview. Maybe the next page they want to see are the investments, and the next page are people. What do we want to show on the people page? We want to talk about their culture. We want to talk about their professional development. So as an insight into making a website, before doing the actual putting everything together, a key part is like, what's the right information and how does that want to be told? And a very S1T2 slide is like the type of things that the developers were experimenting with. Like we wanted to get this idea of exploring a landscape. We wanted to use light and shadow to give messages, and we wanted it to be really subtle. We wanted it to be interactive. So these aren't just like videos, they actually follow the mouse scroller. And altogether, like, this is like a very quick version of this case study, but you know, going there, meeting the client, this was very much like months-long project, going through different photography. But the one on the left shows more of the homepage, which was deliberately really subtle and using the WebGL from the web developers to make all these, like, maybe it's not coming out in this, but like metaphors with the shadows and the geometry, whilst also having like a lot of functional pages and making all these decisions about how the images should be cropped, what type of images were right, all the like spacing between the sections were really important. The next project I'm going to tell you about is kind of a little bit of a dream project. When it came about, Tash said to me one day, he's like, oh, we're going to work for Snoop Dogg. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, really, it was the Snoop Dogg campaign from Menulog. I needed to make this like website for them. This was the end result, like a little bit of the end result. It's called Menulog Baller Banquet. And what we had to do here was, they wanted to run off the back of the advert campaign, and they wanted more people to use Menulog. So we had to think, we thought about what different ways we could get people to order more. And we came up with this like online game, which was based around the idea, if you like, we wanted people to be as, just like the advert was all about being lavish and lavish eating. So the idea in this that we had was like, you get rewarded if you order like 3 hamburgers, or you get rewarded for like a ginormous breakfast. And the more that you bought, the more that this scene would become more elaborate. So we had, the idea was that you're a character in this big banquet scene, but you start off just like in your house with a cardboard box pizza and stuff. And as you order more, you get rewarded with a bigger scene that goes more lavish. Suddenly you're in a like rooftop party, and before you know it, you're in a giant castle, and it's all a bit crazy. But I really like this project. It was a really short project, but it allowed me to be, one, really colorful. And I think it also allowed me to bring together some of the like artistic things that I like doing. Like working with an illustrator to draw the illustrations, putting together scenes in Photoshop, cutting out graphics, and you know, sometimes you have to be really like UI focused and UX and pixel perfect and grid-like, and sometimes you get to express yourself, you get to kind of have the crazy ideas. This idea could be about a baller banquet, and like with these, sometimes with advertising, they want you to be, they need to get attention, they want it to be build emotion and be really exciting. So compared to idea, this is much more like free. But I did have to use my expertise as a like UX UI designer, putting together this card system, working in Sketch at the time. Probably now I do Figma, but yeah, like how. And then also in S1T2 they do a lot of game design. So like the details about this, how the money every time you pay, how you get rewarded, how that bar goes up. How these working with the animators to show the movement of when you hover over the boxes, when it opens up, is it enough of a reward? And yeah, we worked with an illustrator. So like you might, sometimes it depends, different jobs, sometimes they might require you to do everything, but a lot of the time it's also about collaboration. So I didn't draw the illustrations for this project. We worked with an illustrator, but as an art director, it's about finding the references, setting the tone. Maybe I had to like half Photoshop it together to get the idea, take a bit of an image from the internet, put it together, and then make it as easy for the illustrator as possible. And a more technical challenge to this project was that it needed to be animated. Well, we wanted it to, it wouldn't have been as cool if it was just a website with an illustration, like set graphics. The idea was that you could like, you're looking in first person and you can look around, but also that some of the images would be moving. This is really moving. Oh, crap. So yeah, that involved like looking a bit further. So how we couldn't just make these big animations in After Effects and put them online because it would take too much file size. So we had to use a more recent software called Lottie, which exports out vector animations at a much smaller, easier to manage file size. So like this project, when you're overseeing the whole thing together, it was getting the emotions right, selling it into the client, thinking of the mechanics of how people buying things will affect the database to make the illustrations change, but also giving that quality control over like, is this animated? Is this still fun? And that needed a lot of like technical. And these are some of the scenes that come together. The scene where you're just starting off in your little house, the scene where you're at the rooftop with a rock star, and the crazy scene where everything is like, I think that was the final boss, and you have like an extreme level of food and a giraffe. And I guess, I guess what I was trying to say here is there's times where you actually need to be silly in your job, or you need to kind of like, there's times where you want to be pixel perfect and getting everything correct, but actually there's times where you need to just be yourself and think, what would I think is cool? What would be really funny here? And like, not be afraid to say that, because there's some companies where they want someone to come and just do their job, and there's other companies where they want people to express themselves that will help like foster like big new ideas or interesting perspectives to look at things. And yeah, this is the end result of it all kind of coming together, mixing like the UI with the art direction, with yeah, animation of it all together. So what I wanted to say here is like working in S1T2 gave me a new feeling about my career as a digital designer. Like one, keep an open mind. I worked in many companies before, and like you've all heard of like imposter syndrome. I think I've got digital designer imposter syndrome because I'm very creative, artistic, and I do like making things that are like interactive. But I've previously been in companies comparing myself to the other digital designers. I don't know all the Figma shortcuts, but coming to S1T2, put myself in a different environment made me realize, oh, my other skills are important. And I think that's a good message for you guys. Like you might be focusing on one type of company and you might think that you're not good because you're not getting in there, but there's a whole different company doing a whole different type of thing that like might be really great for you. Like collaborating with other experts. At S1T2, we're all experts in what we do, but we're all open-minded and can collaborate with other people. So to make Adia and Bula Banquet, like I was the graphic designer on them, but Adia wouldn't have been the same if it didn't have all the light and shadow that's only possible with the WebGL. And that involves me not being able to do the exact same like coding, but working together, finding like the best solution, compromising, having discussions to kind of get the idea across. And yeah, bringing your non-design thinking to the table. I think I've really come to appreciate that at S1T2 of being in workshops, being in meetings and having an idea that didn't come from what I studied at uni or a design blog or a book. It came from me living life and like, oh, this would be a great idea to connect with people with this. Like in Bula Banquet, we were connecting with, I guess, the commercial young people ordering menu log who like Snoop Dogg as an advert. Working on a project currently with a school and as well as people caring about the typography, people really care about what connects with them, and that involves me thinking beyond like my design stuff. And I also wanted to say that my personal kind of ethos is to keep doing the fun, creative stuff outside of work that I like doing, when it's illustration, doing talks, painting. When I was younger, I sold t-shirts, I done an exhibition, and I think definitely S1T2 appreciates that, and all my other companies too, of like bringing that, like not just completely getting lost in what you're currently doing, your like current digital design or projects, but also like one, connecting with, I guess, like the soulful things for me, whether it's using actual paint, whether it's cutting things up, and also not being afraid to share that with my company or putting it on Instagram. And, you know, sometimes just letting people know, like, that's what you're good at. So I feel like it's a bit of both. It's a bit of doing what you're most passionate about and also knowing like the fundamentals of your field. In a more practical sense, in my portfolio, the one I made to come to Australia was like, I have two sections. I have one which is work, where I put all my projects. Basically, any recruiter or any job will tell you like, you just need like 6 projects and they'll be your best projects and that will help you to get a job. But because I do all this stuff outside of work, I still wanted to show that. So I put it in a completely like different section where it was just like for people to see. Yeah, so I guess when I made my website, especially moving country and like, it wasn't in a rush to find a job. I wanted to just capture one, me as a person and what I'm really like proud of, but 2, something that helps you to get a job. And even on the the kind of projects section, my first two projects, the ones that I kind of showed at job interviews, is a mix of a balance of one, a really expressive branding project, was a kind of work project, but more like a side project, and two, a really like functional banking app project. And I guess my portfolio is kind of old now, but when I came 3 years ago and I was in Melbourne and I didn't know anyone and I was emailing recruiters, these two helped me. Like I had a lot of job interviews in Melbourne showing this, like the banking stuff, like broadband companies and things. And everyone was like, that's great. Like, you can kind of work for us. And it was like, it was basically a really good, like safety net. And then, but this one was the one I was really proud of, which was more, the banking one didn't really give you an idea of who Francisco is. Like anyone could do that job. But this one was more like by doing the hand-drawn style and stuff. That was, I guess, differentiating me from the other people that did banking projects. And finally, it's a video of me presenting while I'm presenting. But like one thing that I feel is important is to like bring yourself to this new company that you're going to. And something that I've found to be a passion of mine now is like speaking. And yeah, in these companies I've been to, sometimes you might be going to do an internship or working in a big corporate place. And a good way to like get your ideas out there is to take the opportunity to like present, show your inspiration, show them what exhibitions you've been to. But also when you're going for an interview, you're really articulating your ideas. Like people are going to ask you, like, how did you get to that logo? And you speaking, being a bit more confident will help you. And like use the opportunities when you're in uni to do, like when you're doing your presentations and stuff, take that as a chance to use your voice and like project and get out there. This is my kind of final bits. Know your craft. Like I could just tell you, do your thing and be passionate, but to get a job, that safety net of my banking project or your safety net of a really like functional project will help you. Don't get lost in what you don't know in that field. Like still do whatever you're really passionate about, concept art or Instagram videos or whatever it is. Like that thing will help you to like keep going. And it might take time to get there. Like your first job might not be that really exciting job. Your first job might help you to get really good at After Effects or Sketch or whatever it is. And if you're doing your side project at the same time, you're having that two-part thing, which is like, I'm functional, I can do a job, but I'm also creative. And working at S1T2 made me realize like that there's more than one way. Like before S1T2, I knew all of the like digital design companies, but there's a whole different way. And there's different ways besides even getting jobs, like whether it's freelancing or starting your own business. So yeah. And finally, come join our slide. Basically, like I think I wanted to put it out there that we want to help like young people and students and just show you what work we do, but my journey to give you some inspiration that you can like do the things that you want to do in the future. And we put it into kind of two parts. One, which is a paid internship, and please send your portfolios through to talent@s1t2.com, where you can be working on some like client work. Actually, we're doing a really cool project at the moment, looking for like motion designers. But like, if you send your portfolio through to talent@s1t2, we will have a look, and like, if anything matches our projects, we'll call you in. but I also wanted to open it up to maybe, like last year I worked with some UTS students, and there's some people that are really talented and hardworking and passionate, but maybe want some help with getting more digital or being more confident. I'm opening up to kind of like helping on a more voluntary basis, which would be like more about helping you. So you can shoot me an email and can follow S1T2 on Instagram, where you'll see the type of projects we work on and probably post about different things that we're advertising. And if you're going to follow Francisco London, that's it.
Well, thanks so much for that. I'm going to put the lights on. Any questions? There's got to be a question. Any questions? Yeah.
You were saying about like obviously you know, having to work very helpful, but is there anything personal that you could professional and self out there sometimes a hard.
Yeah, just trying to think. That is the hardest part, and I guess like now, that's what I kind of say. Like when I change jobs and stuff, change countries, it starts again. Like you're kind of lacking confidence. And for me personally, is going back to the things that I love, whether it's like drawing and painting. Sometimes even putting them on Instagram, like you get that confidence. Like sometimes I'm struggling on a project and I'm comparing myself to other digital designers, and I'm not that, but I put a like really colorful, expressive painting. That's the thing that those other people can't do. And that's like me. So as a kind of just a general, and I also think like it's important to, you know, you're a creative person. When you're creative, there's no wrong and right. In design and work, there's wrong and right. But when you're creative, you know, you be bold in what you say, then that's just you being an artist. So I think it's important to connect with those things. And then also like just to get yourself out there. Like when I was in that like museum car place, I wasn't in an agency. So I'd go to all the talks. I'd go and say hello to the people that I was sitting next to. I'd basically like, when you're not in it, this world seems like far and distant and everyone speaks prim and proper. But when you get yourself closer, you meet people, you go for coffees, like you're just making them more human and less of a distance. And that's the truth. Like that's maybe what I was trying to say in my presentation, is like we're all human, we're just the same. I didn't know anything and kind of figured it out along the way.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you have any tips for interviews?
Yes. Definitely the one is like process. So in my portfolio, I showed a process, but even you might go in detail, like showing a PDF. But there's two reasons for that. Like you might think that you're being decided on by how slick your graphics are, but really, if you have when you have a nice portfolio project, they've called you for an interview. They think that your work looks good. But let's say you've done a project for a cafe branding and the company is doing a project for a school branding. When you talk through the process in an interview, you're explaining why you chose that green. You're explaining like how you got from point 1 to point 2 to point 3, and you're not making it about you or how good you are, and like you're making it about the decisions that you made. The interviewer will be like really interested, right? Probably you'll show something like really insightful inspiration. Oh, I went on holiday and I saw this thing that inspired this, and yeah, it then allows the interview to be about you, about being a designer and the design decisions that you make.
I might just add to that because I think that's a really good question. So to use an analogy, when we do a pitch or a presentation, what we do, we're in a similar position. And what we'll tend to do is actually try to stalk who is going to be present in the room. And so Cisco's answer, I would say, comes from the point of view of the design lead. Whereas if, for example, myself were in the room or someone else, we might look at different things. So I think what would help is that if, I presume everyone's going from a design-oriented job, then you most likely will have a design lead in the room, an art director, creative director, which Cisco's point on process is development. And then you might have someone else in the room, which is more like a business decision maker. And the kind of things they're probably looking for are more like what sets you apart, your character, maybe some intangible things. And why I really like what Cisco talks about with his portfolio is that, you know, people do look at that play side of things, because that's what sets you apart. And Cisco's whole message on being different and being yourself, it is unfortunately a really competitive world for the best studios and the best agencies, and you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Mm.
But I struggled to find what ratio portfolio.
It's, you know, a funny story comes to mind. Yeah, I was going for a job when I hadn't finished my portfolio. I was just going out of curiosity, and then this company, they just moved studios and their broadband wasn't, the internet wasn't working, and it was like a bit of a nightmare. And the point is, they didn't get to see the images properly, but I got to speak them through my decision making, and that still got me to the next stage. And like, so it's not really, and I've actually seen, like, sometimes I've seen it where the designer's like really talking in detail about the typography choice and things like that. But it's more getting to the point of like, this was the problem that was given to me. Like cafe owner wanted their branding, they wanted it to express something about themselves. And this was the end result, this logo, this color, this texture that I used. And just give those the insightful moments to how you got there. So they might quiz you further, like, oh, what made you go for that? But I guess you might have a short amount of time, you might have like 5 minutes. And so it's not really about going through every detail. It's just going from that zero to the final design, the key things that were like important to those decisions, and then go from there, I guess. I also think sometimes when I do a presentation, not this time, but when I'm at home, like sometimes I might practice to my mum, because I'm like, if the like, not the lowest common dominant, like instead of like trying to explain all these like fancy design things, but if someone normal understands and gets the like idea and the emotion behind it, I think that's a good like basis to it.
Let me see if there's anything online. Right. Well, thanks so much for coming in. It was really good to have you back. Yeah, everyone, we will see you upstairs in the studios up in Africa. Okay. Thanks so much.
Mm.